So, what exactly is Starfield, and should you buy it? Well, after pretty much playing it non-stop since the premium version came out, which I bought by the way, hashtag not sponsored, I think I can take a crack at the answer, even if the people who made Starfield aren't exactly sure. First of all, let's address the game's premises on the Steam page without spoilers. Tell your story. While the game does have a deep character builder and traits, I have found numerous occasions in the game where your choice in dialogue is just ignored. One good example is right in the beginning when you are asked about something that happens. You can tell the NPC what happened or choose not to. I chose to stay quiet and not tell them, but in the NPC's next line, he ignored my answer and asked me directly about what I experienced, describing exactly what happened even though I never told him. Another such example involves a bank, where the game in theory appears to give you two choices of how to do the mission, but forces you to do one of them, then the other if the first fails. In the end, yes, you can try to live out a role play in the game, but the game will impose artificial limits and force you down certain paths just to move the narrative in a certain way. Nothing wrong with that, but it contradicts the premise they make just a little. Explore outer space. While you can definitely go to a lot of planets and moons, most are really useless. Unless there's a specific encounter or side mission there, it would never be worth your time to go there anyway. So about 90% of the 1,000 or so planets are just like most of the items littering the game. They're just there to fill out the space. Don't get me wrong, you can go and explore these worlds if you want to. But there is no real reason other than to say, yeah, been there, nothing to see or do. Captain the ship of your dreams. Here is the biggest strength of Starfield versus other space-themed games, the ship editor and builder. It is very detailed, and I have spent hours editing the ships I have acquired, let's say. It is very in-depth and with interesting trade-offs that make it even more complex if you really want to get into making your perfect ship. From fast, hard-hitting smaller ships to behemoths to tank entire fleets, looks like you can do all of it. One thing to consider is you might capture some ships that break the rules of the ship editor itself, like a part that is impossible for you to place due to clipping the part next to it, but it somehow comes like that originally. So be very careful and check every little thing, or you can ruin the feel and balance of a ship and then have it perform worse than when you fought against it to acquire it. Discover, collect, build. Okay, here is one of my biggest pet peeves with Starfield. Yes, you can build outposts and gather resources, craft things, etc. Base building is relatively satisfying if the game lets you build a base in the first place. Bethesda have placed a ridiculous progression system within the outpost placing system that stops you from building on a planet or moon if there is something even slightly adverse to it. Now, this would be all fine and dandy if they didn't ignore the fact that you can pretty much only build from the get-go on planetary bodies with either an Earth-like surface, very pleasant and mild, or a barren surface, even with no magnetosphere. Slightly colder, hotter, toxic, or corrosive planets are off limits. But no magnetosphere to protect you from solar radiation? That's totally fine. They apparently have the tech to deny even being adversely affected by solar radiation, but not a toxic atmosphere. Toxic. Like you can't breathe or touch it in the nude, but you have a spacesuit capable of protecting you from radiation, but not toxic air? You need to spend at least 15 points in science skills and complete their rank missions to be able to make an outpost on a toxic planet. Right. Oh, and before I get into the actual space part of it, prepare yourself for very contradictory mechanics. This can happen to you like it did to me. I placed down a small landing pad. Great. Later I wanted to replace it with one bigger with a ship editor and builder in it. Nope. You can only have one pad placed. Okay. Go to delete the previous smaller one. Can't. There is a ship on it. Okay. Get on the ship, go to space, and land back down at the base. Now the ship could be where I wanted to place the new landing pad, but luckily it wasn't. And finally placed the new landing pad. All of this because of one thing that can absolutely ruin your immersion in the game, but I'll get to that in a second. Space, flight, and combat. Okay, here we go. First, space flight does not exist. It's just atmospherical flight, meaning all ships move like planes in air, not if they actually were in space. And okay, that's fine. They wanted to keep it simple, like No Man's Sky. But then you don't actually land, take off, or travel anywhere in your ship. It's all cutscenes, loading screens, and fast traveling everywhere. You can't use your ship on the planets, there's no exploring on foot and then call your ship to you. There's no autopilot, nothing. Even if you have a crew inside your ship, they can't sit in the pilot seat and fly it over to you if you just want to go out and explore the planet's surface further. You just fast travel everywhere, planet side or in space. You see, your ship is basically only good for two things: combat and mining asteroids. That's it. It's just a complementary system to the real purpose of this game. It's almost just like a little mini-game within a space-themed game. Next, I have to make this point because it's one of the things I love the most about another RPG, one of the best of all time, Kingdom Come Deliverance, or KCD for short. The NPCs in Starfield, the people around you, are just lifeless. They're just moving parts in an animated scenery. You might as well be alone in Starfield. You see, in KCD, they have life. They wake up in the morning, they sit to eat, then go to work, to the fields or shops, spend their day there, then go to the tavern and have some drinks, or do some chores as night falls, eat dinner, and go to sleep. They have lives, and you can follow them around and observe them. It's honestly amazing and steps up the immersion to a whole new level. You know that during the day, they are at work. At night, they're all inside sleeping. You really don't feel alone in that world. In Starfield, well, they might as well not even exist, to be honest, and they could have saved the extra resources for something else. This brings me to what is commonly called the Uncanny Valley, a place reserved for things that both look close to being human, but not enough, so our brain just finds them repulsive. This feeling emanated from almost all the NPCs. They just don't look right. Not artificial enough for our brain to easily make that distinction, and not human enough to make them familiar. Their expressions are weird, their behavior is nonsensical, and they move in ways just not pleasing. I honestly just feel this universe is full of those AI, weird-looking robots advertised on the TV and the future of robotics. It's just not good at all. For all these things and a few others I haven't mentioned because I'm not sure if they're all bugs or actual features, there are a couple of questions I can now answer. Is Starfield a competitor to No Man's Sky? No, never. The only aspect, literally the only one, that Starfield has more depth is the RPG part. The skill systems, the conversations are animated and voiced, the companions, the main story, that part is definitely better. Everything else, though, not really. Base building, exploration, using your spaceship on the planet's surface, or actually traveling in space, space combat, the size of the universe, weapon system customizations, upgradabilities, ship systems and their upgrades, exocrafts you can travel around the planet, a freaking autopilot for your ship to actually come to you and land close to you on the planet's surface. Every single system around the RPG element of the game is better and more detailed in No Man's Sky. But, and here's the big but, Starfield wasn't meant to compete with No Man's Sky. It's an RPG first and foremost. They never meant to make it equal or to go against the expanse and endless possibilities of No Man's Sky. It's just a different game. Then, is Starfield a competitor for Star Citizen? Absolutely not. Star Citizen is a space simulator for the $30,000 man cave customized like the interior of their ship in-game players. It's just anally complex around the spaceship part of it. And like before, Starfield was never meant to come close to it. They're just two different games. For a fan of the space genre like myself, having played all three, they have different priorities and appeal to different types of players or just moods. all three games can happily coexist and thrive next to each other because they provide three completely different experiences. Star Citizen is more of a simulator, Starfield is more of an RPG, and No Man's Sky is meant to experience the vastness and endless possibilities within the universe. So, is Starfield a good game? Yes. Personally, I would rate it a 7 out of 10, a solid start to what I hope is a bigger future with more content being brought to it and maybe fix all the bugs, of which there are a lot. Bethesda said this is the least buggy one, but be advised, your mileage may vary. My experience had everything from little things I could ignore to almost bricking my save completely and having to start over. Now for the main question. Should you buy it now that you have a better idea of what it actually is? Well, it's up to you really, but if you like RPGs and need one with a space theme around it, go for it. I did, and so far I don't regret it. If what you really wanted was a cheaper Star Citizen, it's not that. If you were looking for a realistic looking No Man's Sky, it's not that either. It's like Skyrim with newer graphics and a lick of spacey paint on it. And that's just fine. How about yourself? Are you going to buy it? Have you changed your mind? Are you happy with how it came out? Do you have other issues or questions around Starfield? Leave it in the comments below. Just please be respectful. Leave a like, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.